I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. I mean, it's NFL draft week. I mean, Thursday's going to roll around and we're going to hear the chimes. There's going to be picks. I mean, this is like the gear up to Christmas for us here on the program.
This is arguably the most exciting week of the year in the NFL.
You walked into my office today. The first words out of your mouth. I hadn't talked to you over the weekend. I hadn't said anything to you this morning. The first words out of your mouth when you walked into my office for the morning meeting, happy draft week. First words, not good morning, not what do we got. First words out of producer Evan's mouth this morning, happy draft week. So you can tell where we're at here. I had a buddy share with me who's in the draft media space. He shared with me over the weekend his final big board. He sent it to me and I was looking at it. I'm like, I'm ready to go. Like, I am ready to go for Thursday. I'm ready to start to see the puzzle pieces get put together on draft night. And as a word of caution for everybody here, don't believe anything you read this week. Just don't. This team likes this guy all of a sudden out of nowhere. Just go into this with a very healthy amount of skepticism that if you hear something this week that you're hearing for the first time, it very well could be true, right? It was a couple of years ago where all of a sudden out of nowhere, Baker Mayfield was going to be the number one pick, right? It does happen where something that you don't hear throughout the whole process just pops up in the last week. But more often than not, those things end up not being true, and they're part of the smoke screen game that is being played. So just have a healthy dose of skepticism this week.
There is always the late climber, though. Always.
Well, it certainly appears as if it's
I feel like we already have our candidates.
It's one of the quarterbacks. It's Jackson Dart. It's Jalen Milroe. It certainly feels like it's one of those two guys.
Milroe's going in the first round.
Yeah, you've been on this for a couple of weeks now that Milroe's going in the first round. But we will keep an eye on all of it. And I read a great story this morning on azcentral.com by Bob McManaman over the Arizona Republic. He wrote a column, 6 ways the Arizona Cardinals could go with the 16th pick. And he just picked a player at every position that we've been talking about. He picked a edge rusher. He picked Mykel Williams. For offensive tackle, he picked Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas. For defensive tackle, he picked Walter Nolan. For offensive guard, he picked Tyler Booker, somebody who we've seen mocked to the Cardinals a lot of the times in the second round of 2-round mocks, but somebody who has been named as a member of the Arizona Cardinals in these mock drafts. Corner, Will Johnson, and wide receiver, by the way, shout out to Bob, because Bob didn't fall for the trap. Bob didn't pick T-Mac. Bob went right for our guy, Matthew Golden, as his wide receiver pick. So those 6 names. I ask you, any of those 6 names, would you be upset if the Cardinals drafted any of those 6 guys? Would you be upset if Matthew Golden was the pick? Would you be upset if Will Johnson was the pick? What about Tyler Booker, Walter Nolan, Kelvin Banks Jr., Mykel Williams? All positions of need: edge, offensive tackle, interior offensive line, defensive line, corner, wide receiver. All of the positions that we have been kicking around here for the last 2 months about what the Cardinals might do on draft night. Every single one of those players, I think, would be a great fit for this team and would make sense. And by the way, all of those guys could be there at 16. Not all of those guys would require a move up. Not all of those guys would be a part of a trade back. They could just stay at 16 and pick those guys. And I'm here to tell you, any one of those guys on that list, I'd have zero problem with.
I think that Booker would be a trade back.
Of the 6 names,
I wouldn't love him at 16.
I have seen his name linked to the Cardinals, like I said, more when you see 2-round mock drafts, and he is their pick in the second round. And Bob does mention that if he slips out of the first round, that he would move up early to get him in day 2, but says that if Arizona really wants him, the team could probably trade down, gain an additional pick, and still grab him. But you just never know. If somebody loves Tyler Booker, they're just going to take him.
If you love your guy, if he's high on your big board,
take him.
I always think, stick to your gut. Don't let the board dictate what you do. You have your guys, you have your big board, you have your list. Stick to it.
Here's where that principle, I think, is really true, is if you have a guy on your board that you love, and you know that you think you can trade down 4 or 5 spots and still get that guy, and you work the phones, and you work the phones, and you work the phones, but you can't get a deal you like. None of the deals are matching the value that you're looking for. But you're going to stay and make the pick. You don't want to forfeit the selection. So you may, quote unquote, reach, but you're still going to pick your guy. but you're going to exhaust every other option to maybe maximize that pick to move down a couple of spots, still get the guy you want, and get additional value. That's the way the draft game works. But yes, if you love your guy and you exhaust every other option and the only thing you can do is stay in that spot and make a selection, you take your guy. Especially if you think that guy's not going to be there when you pick next. You take that guy. If you have convictions on somebody, you have to be unwavering in those convictions.
And if somebody falls who you haven't done too much work on and you love the value there, it's risky if you haven't done a lot of work on somebody like, let's say a Will Johnson falls. I think they've done their work on Will Johnson. But let's say a Will Johnson gets to 16. They haven't done much work, but Booker's their guy and they can't trade back. Then it gets interesting of just stick to your plan. Take Booker, continue to let Will Johnson fall. And that's what we've seen. That's why we see some of these guys fall way farther than ever expected.
It's why Bo Callahan falls in the movie Draft Day. Bo Callahan falls in the movie Draft Day because everybody's scrambling. They don't know why Bo Callahan is falling, but they just stay true to their boards. Okay? I'm going to reference Draft Day once a day, every day until the NFL draft. All week this week, you're getting Draft Day references. Bo Callahan falls in that movie because everybody else doesn't know what to do. They expect Bo to go 1-1. He doesn't. It throws the entire draft off. But everybody just stays true to their board, and they just take the guys that are on their board because they're flustered. They don't know what to do. And so their default position, their North Star is, we got to trust our board. Got to trust our board. We got to trust our board. And they just go with who's on their board. That's what allows Sonny to make all of the moves that he makes to get his picks back from Seattle.
You have to wonder, did his Colorado teammates show up to Shador's birthday party? That's going to be the question on draft night this year.
That's an excellent question. And did anybody have any playbook shenanigans like they have in the movie? See, I'm using all of the material here on Monday. I've got 3 more days of these references. Excellent movie.
Save some.
We used a bunch. I've got a couple in the back pocket. Okay. But yes, it's one of my favorite movies, and it's about the NFL draft. So we're going to reference it a bunch this week here on the program. And this is, I wanted to point out Bob's story because any of those 6 names, you can maybe agree or disagree about taking Tyler Booker in the first round, but any of those 6 names would be great for the Cardinals to end up with. Choices. This is what happens when you have a well-run organization that has done the work to reshape this roster and get this roster in a place where, hear me when I say this team still needs work. This team is not a complete playoff contender, Super Bowl contender, right? This team still needs work. But they are in a much better spot than they were 2 years ago. 2 years ago, the cupboards were bare. 2 years ago, you just needed quality talent in the building because you needed quality talent anywhere. But now, over 2 full off seasons, a couple of drafts, getting some blue chip prospects in there, landing guys like Josh Sweat, making the free agent acquisitions that this team has made, utilizing the 21 picks that they've had over the last couple of years to get, at worst, a bunch of starters for their team. You're now in a position where I'm not saying you need to be picky, but you have choices. You have options. You're not locked into needing to get X or needing to get Y. You don't need to take a wide receiver in the first round like we thought you did last year. You don't need to take an edge rusher like we thought you did last year, like we thought you were going to have to do at the beginning of this offseason before you landed Josh Sweat. You have choices. Those choices are a good thing. Those choices provide you flexibility. It is my favorite word in sports when it comes to talking about front offices. If you have flexibility, it puts you ahead of everybody else. You're ahead of the curve. You have more options. You have more cards to play. Your chips are not all the way in the middle yet. They might be at some point, and they might be at some point in the near future. But right now, Monty's still got a lot of chips in front of him. Still has a lot of cards left to play. And we'll see what cards they choose to play on Thursday night, night 1 of the NFL draft.